Sick with the slang, sick and I'm destined for fame. Do for the fam, not for the gram. Stunting, you're destined for pain. I do not front, I do not scam. Put some respect on my name. Sick like Cobain, click and I bang. Y'all gon' remember the name. Y'all gon' remember the name.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world? I would like to welcome you back to another episode of Real Talk with Zuby. Today, we have got on Jeramiah Solven, who is the founder of Concur Academy. He is a performance and leadership coach. Welcome to the show, Jeramiah. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on here. I'm truly honored and humbled to be a part of this right now. So again, just thank you.
That's awesome, man. And whereabouts in the world are you recording this from?
So I'm currently in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And so in the U.S. I know you're in the U.K., right?
That's right.
Yeah, you actually have a really interesting story. So your family's from Nigeria, right? And then you were born and raised in Saudi Arabia, and then now you live in the UK. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, man.
Yeah, so that's going to make this really fun because we'll get into my background, but diverse backgrounds are always really interesting to me.
Yeah, man, 100%. So introduce yourself to the audience. So tell the world a little bit more about you, your journey, who you are, and what you do.
So, yeah, up front, I'm the founder of Concur Academy. It's my performance and leadership coaching business. But I'm a former 75th Ranger Regiment officer. So for those that aren't familiar, that's a special operations background. And that's really where the next chapter of my life has started. And that's kind of put me into this business that I'm in now, this coaching and leadership business. The underlining theme in my life has been, constant evolution. I come from a very small town and, about 300 people. I guess it's pretty sheltered, but through constant failures, I've continued to evolve throughout life, and it's allowed me to do some pretty phenomenal things. And so I've channeled all that into a how-to and created this business, Concur Academy, to show people how to get fed up and evolve their lives.
And I've seen lots of you do a lot of video posts on Instagram, a lot of motivational, inspirational stuff. But I like it because it's not just fluff talk. It's you can tell that you're someone who's had some experiences and is talking from experience and is trying to give people some practical advice rather than just rah feel good about yourself kind of stuff. Which I think there's a lot of that out there. So when I saw that, it was pretty cool and refreshing.
Yeah, man. That's something that really gets to me. It's you have a big movement with people moving into the motivational and success space, and they're getting everybody hyped up with nowhere to go. And, that's really why I do social media, is to help people out and kind of give them actual stuff that works, the practical tools. Cause I have thousands, if not tens of thousands of hours of study into this field. And, there's nothing more frustrating than being misguided and not having a way to apply it. So my Instagram is 100% about practical tools. And, some people would get upset that I'm sharing so much free information. I've had people criticize me for that. It's like, hey, make me make the jump into your business is what they'll tell me. And that's not the point of my Instagram. It's to share the stuff, make people better, and then make an impact one person at a time. So it's been hard to do social media for me personally. It doesn't come natural to me, but it took through a lot of practice, and I know that the message that I'm trying to send is bigger than myself. So that's why I do it. I hope that it finds the right person.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I think whatever kind of content you put out there, whatever value you put out in the world, I'm a big believer that it might not be in the short term, but I think eventually, yeah, one, you'll find your audience. And two, I think that kind of value and positivity and karma, if you want, kind of comes back around. That's how I think these things happen. It's been really similar with me and my music career. It's just, been really building up each relationship one by one. It was never like I'd put out one song or dropped one video or something and suddenly thousands and thousands of people knew who I was. It was really like, meet that person and that person, whether online or in the real world. And then having done that literally tens of thousands of times, hundreds of thousands of times, after a while, the people who like your stuff tend to gravitate towards you. And it's not going to be everybody. You're never going to get the majority of people. But I think those who come and stay and find value, those are the people who you want to be targeting and having in your audience anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And from the small success that I have had, I say it's small. I mean, it's probably big to some other people, but to me, it's still small in the grand scheme of things. what's worked is starting with that warm pool of people in your close proximity and just making one impact at a time. A lot of people get ambitious about where they want to go in life, and it can be really overwhelming and hard to impact, hundreds of thousands of people at moment's notice. So the better way to go about it is start with your close circle, heat that up and warm it and warm it and warm it. And then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, man, 100%. So Jeremiah, take us back a little bit, man. Tell us a little bit about your childhood growing up and, your experiences, your time in the armed forces. Just tell us the journey. We've got time, so you can expand on that a lot more.
All right. So I grew up in a small town in Northern California called Trinity Center. It's a town of about 300 people. I was born in the 80s, and we come from a low-income family. I'm hesitant to call it poor because these days I see poor people, and I didn't have it as rough as them. But we did have government coupons. We did eat government cheese. I've drank powdered milk before. My family, had their own little garden, which we harvested every year to have food in the house. And the nearest grocery store was 2 hours away. I say all that because it shapes, who I am. I spent a lot of time outside. I spent a lot of time just playing in the woods and playing with my brothers. I have 3 brothers and then my dad. So we joke that my mom has raised 5 boys, So yeah, that kind of shapes the household. My dad was a bit of an entrepreneur. Looking back at it, growing up, he left the Bay Area in California to kind of get away from the city. He wanted to live off the land. So he brought my mom and us up to Northern California to get away from all that. And he's just kind of been a jack of all trades growing up. So I think that's probably where I get some of my entrepreneur ambitions. But we used to do a lot of bear hunting. That was one of the things he did when I was when I was growing up. We used to take people out on guides, and I've hunted everything from squirrel to bear, deer. I've hunted it all. So
tell me more about hunting a bear, because I can't say that we don't even have animals in the UK that can kill you. So I'm quite curious. We don't have guns either. So I'm curious as to what hunting a bear is like and why you'd want to hunt a bear as well.
Sure, for food. So like I said at the beginning, we essentially were living off the land. It's kind of funny. I remember that garden that I was telling you about. We used to grow lettuce, cucumbers, and whatever, and we would take it to the gas station outside of that small town that I told you about. My parents would have us sell groceries outside of that gas station. When they had small little knickknacks in there, they had canned beans, and they had some food, but it was just funny selling food outside of a store. But
they didn't have a problem with that.
No, I mean, it was a tight community. So the community knew we were struggling, and they were like, go ahead, have fun. So yeah, we used to hunt bear as a means to gather meat and stuff. And there's 2 ways to do it. You can stalk a bear individually, but we used to use dogs. So it's kind of funny because bear hunting with dogs is a lot like the military. You start off super early in the morning, you get ready to go on patrol, you get all your dogs loaded up, you get your gear ready. But I used to tag along with my dad, and he would have me ride in the passenger seat and look for bear tracks on the road as we were driving. And we would have the dogs in the back of the truck. We'd have one dog out on the back of it there, which was the main dog for scenting out the bear, right? As soon as that dog picked up the bear scent and I found a track, we'd launch on a bear hunt, and it would be, game on. And my role in that was 1, to find the tracks. And then 2, when we did chase a bear and got it up a tree, my dad would have me jump off the side of the cliff, the mountain, and go verify whether or not the bear was in the tree or not. Because bears, they move all the time. They'll go up a tree, they'll rest, and then they'll take off again. And the dogs will that race will go on for sometimes days. And
wow.
It's not as easy as everybody says it is or thinks it is. And it's really physically exhausting. So I would go down there and verify whether or not, and my buddies would be with me. I had one close friend that he did this with me every weekend. So he'd be tagging along with me. We'd go verify. And if the bear wasn't there, my dad would, come down the mountain and pick us up on the backside, or we'd have to figure out our way across the next spur, the next draw to tie in with him, and then continue that until we caught the bear. So that's kind of how it starts. So it's a lot of work. And then sometimes you end up capturing one and letting it go. Sometimes you capture one and you kill it and you eat it. We never killed any bears that, had cubs with them. We never did anything like that. So if you treat a bear and it had the cubs, that's one of those times where you would just let it go. So yeah, I spent a lot of time my childhood doing that. And
Okay.
I thought my dad just liked to hang out with me. And I realized as I got older that he was using me as free labor. We'd kill the bear down in the yeah, we'd kill a bear down in a draw, and we'd be chopping it up to pack it out, and all of a sudden I'm carrying all the weight, and I'm just like doing these laps to the top of the hill and back down. It was a fun experience, man, and it really formed me who I am.
People do eat bears, yeah. What's bear meat like?
It's pretty good. I mean, I really enjoy the bear jerky. We used to make a lot of jerky out of it, and then hunting bear is a full-time job. Like if you can treat it as a profession, because when the hunting season is just like sports, it's just like football. There's a season for it, and then in the off season you're training. So when we weren't hunting bear, we were training the dogs for hunting bear. That was bear hunting growing up.
Yeah, no, it's cool, man. I like to hear these stories. That's just one awesome thing about the world. When you talk to different people, everyone has such a different background story and experience and stuff. And I think it's always interesting to know kind of what people went through and how people grew up, because I think it, in a lot of ways, it really forms how people are as adults and how they view the world, and their viewpoints and experiences and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's just fascinating to me. Tell us a little bit about, I guess, your teenage years, and then going into the military as well. When did you do that?
Yeah, so actually it's kind of funny because when I was in high school, I actually avoided the recruiter a lot. Like I was constantly dodging him. I didn't like his cheesy sales pitches and how just aggressive he was trying to get everybody, hey, this is the great journey, like come join the military. This is freedom right here. And I just didn't enjoy that. And I had my close friend that I used to hunt with, he ended up enlisting, and he went into serve with the 82nd Airborne as an infantryman. And my girlfriend that I had for, my high school sweetheart, she ended up joining right after high school, and she went on to serve as a nurse. And so at the end of high school, I was kind of alone. And but that's kind of getting ahead of myself. What's kind of interesting is I told you that I grew up a lot, spending a lot of time outdoors and playing in the woods. I also spent a lot of time acting like a soldier. Me and my buddies used to, or my brothers and my buddy, we used to make traps and stuff in the woods. We used to, there's another family in our same little town that we used to have wars with, quote unquote wars, where we would try to track them down and they would try to track us down. And so we spent a lot of our youth doing that. Again, not a lot to do in this small town where we didn't have TV. We had a TV, but it was sitting on the ground. We had like one channel that my dad like hijacked off the neighbor's jack or something. So all my time was spent outside, and we would have you play these games where we were just, have our own little tribes or whatever of kids, and we'd play against each other. I remember we made this trap one time. It was it wasn't a snare trap. It was a tripwire. So we laid this, I'm probably 12 years old. And we laid this tripwire across this trail. And the idea was that the neighborhood kids, this other family, would come through our little area, our security area, try to infiltrate our AO. They would trip the tripwire, and we had it hooked up to this, what we thought was a giant, tree log, but it was like, this thing probably weighed like 15 pounds, if that, but it was very dramatic in our minds. And it was pretty tall, but it was all dried out. So we set this tripwire, we set up this log, and we're like, yeah, this is going to be epic. They're going to come through. We're going to win this battle. And my dog comes around the corner, and he starts, he starts walking down this trail, the same trail. And we're like, oh, not Mick, because that was his name, Mick. And he was a German short hair. And this guy went everywhere with us. And he comes walking down. And on one end, we're really excited because we're like, maybe he'll trip the line and we'll see if this works. On the other, what if this hits him and he dies? Or, in our mind, we thought he was gonna die. So we're sitting there like, no, we're kind of like frozen. And he comes down the trail. He trips the tripwire. We're like, yes, no, yes. And we're like, Mick, no, run. And the tree comes falling down, and it hits him right on the ass, and he scurries off. But in our minds, like, we thought he was going to die, right? So this tree is very, very dramatic. Hits him, he scurries off. And so anyways, we did stuff like that all the time. Then going into high school, there's a bunch of small schools outside of our local high school where the kids commuted. You know, it was a 30-minute drive for me to get to high school. When I got there, the school was a little bit bigger than what I was used to. So in elementary school, I graduated with 8 kids. And then we went on to high school and all these kids commuted. In my high school senior class, I graduated with 100. So it scaled up a little bit. It was very overwhelming for me coming from a small town, not knowing anybody. And that transition was pretty hard. I kind of withdrew a little bit from people and, just being a small town kid. But yeah. I say all this because it builds into who I am now and what I'm doing, right? I'm on social media. I'm in business, in entrepreneurship. I'm known as a leader and a coach now. So my evolution is kind of crazy that I've started off so small. Life is long and lived in chapters, so we constantly are going through these evolutions of changing who we are and becoming the next version of ourselves. So that brings me into high school. I can go into that unless you have some.
No, absolutely, man. Carry on. I'm just listening intently.
Okay. Yeah. So I go into high school. Again, I told you about the high school sweetheart I had, my best friend. We spent every single day together. And then some of the older kids encouraged me to come out for wrestling. With 3 brothers, I have a little bit of a background in wrestling. And I end up kind of getting pressured to go out and doing it. And I have a lot of fun. And so that becomes my, my new passion. And I start getting pretty good. I'm really impressed with the amount of technique I'm able to pick up. And I attended some wrestling camps and I start really just throwing myself into it. And we got some help from the local community that helped pay for me to go to some camps and some wrestling camps and whatnot. And so anyways, by my junior year, I get the confidence that I can actually make this a thing and I can go on to college and wrestle, which is a huge breakthrough for me. I'm like small town kid. No way. This isn't even in my scope of the world. So I become obsessed and I start training 3-4 times a day, every single day. And I start beating some of the guys that were beating me as a freshman and sophomore, and my confidence is up. And I remember running down the road in my hometown, just like yelling, state champion, state champion, state champion, just every single day. So I go into my senior year and I had these ambitions to go on to college and wrestle. And the agreement with myself was, if I can go to state and place my senior year, I'll go on to college and wrestle. And so I'm continuing to train. I'm beating these guys that beat me before. And I go to the regional qualifying tournament and I end up in a true second match, which a true second match, for those that don't know, if you end up winning that match, you go on, that winner will go on and attend state. I'm in a true second match and it's like the culminating moment of my dream, right? And I go into double overtime with this guy and I end up beating him. And I'm like, the most physically exhausted I've ever been in my life, hardest time in my life. And I'm just emotional. I finish and my coach comes up and he hugs me and he gives me a giant hug, tells me congratulations. He's like, hey, but there's one thing. He's like, they're not taking true second this year. So that crushed me, right? It really destroyed me. My dreams of going on to college and wrestling were completely gone. And I didn't know what to do. Didn't have any college plans or anything.
Yeah. So what was their reason for not taking it?
Each area, each region, it varied per year, but depending on how many wrestlers you have in that region, they would accept the top 2 positions or just the top 1.
Okay.
So that year they were over their quota and he didn't tell me until that match because he didn't want me to lose focus.
Ah, okay. So he wanted you to obviously go hard and try to win, but okay. That's a shame. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, no knock on him for not telling me that. He was in it with me the whole time. It was pretty discouraging, but that was like the first real heavy failure that I took. And so what I ended up doing is kind of what everybody else does, is I just fell into the social norm. And I had some people that I knew from high school that were going to go to a community college. Now, I'll remind you, my best friend that I spent every single day with since, I was 6 years old, 7 years old, he's gone. He left and went to the military, right? Mm-hmm. High school sweetheart, she goes on and she goes in the military. And then here I am. I'm like, the whole time I'm in high school, I'm not going to do the Army. I'm not going to do the Army. I'm not going to do the Army. And I lose that wrestling match and I'm like, what am I going to do? So I find a new little group of friends. I go to a community college and I'm a decent student at this point. I'm really not I don't test well, but I do great homework. So I end up, 3.3 GPA type of individual, right? I'm not super smart, but I'm a hard worker. And 6 of us go down to Chico, California, and I attend Butte Community College. I do this for 2 semesters, and I'm really at a low point in my life where I just like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I have no purpose. I don't know why I'm going to school. I'm struggling with money. I mean, I remember I was completely broke, and the first time I had asked for money from my parents, I asked my mom for $200 for groceries. I was starving. So anyways, that's kind of the college situation. And what ends up happening is I come home one day and my buddies are all partying. It's like 2 p.m. I'm in my 2nd semester of college, and it's 2 p.m. and everybody's partying. I walk in on some stuff I really didn't want to see, didn't want to be a part of. And I can't even communicate the amount of weight and pressure and disappointment that I had at myself during this point. But I walk in and I'm like, I just shake my head. I'm like, enough. I'm done with this. So I end up enlisting into the Army. My girlfriend and I, my high school girlfriend, me and her split. So that relationship's gone. My best friend's gone. And I'm like, all right, new beginnings, I'm going into the Army. For those that don't know, there's 2 paths in the U.S. Army. You can enlist or you can go the officer route. And typically, when you go the officer route, you need a degree, and it's a little more challenging to get into. So I enlist, and I don't know what I want to do in the Army. I just know that I want to get out of my current situation, and I decided to enlist as an engineer. So I do civil engineer type work. Basically, I start asking the people around me. I say, ask my parents, my friends. I was like, what do you guys think I should do in the Army? They said, well, do something that makes sense that you can use when you get out. I said, okay, so I'll do civil engineering. And I do that, and I go through basic training, and I'm put in a leadership position pretty much right off the bat. I train this whole platoon for the 9 weeks that I'm there. I'm very proud of the responsibility I'm given. And then the day before graduation, the drill sergeants take that position away from me and give it to somebody else. And that was very traumatizing, I guess. It was discouraging because when you're in that position, you get to walk that class in front of everybody's to their parents, right? So you're that guy, you're the one private that's standing in front of the whole platoon. It's a very proud moment. And so every day that I was working and leading these guys as a student leader, I was thinking about that day. Anyway, so the drill sergeants take it away from me. And
what was their reason for that? Was there any warning, or was it just?
No, so there's no warning. What they did was, it was a lesson that I'm not entitled to anything, that everything in the military is you could lose it at any second. This was the lesson they were trying to instill in me.
But you were doing a good job though? Like, you didn't do anything, or? I
did nothing wrong. I was doing a phenomenal job. Absolutely not. Nothing wrong at all. It was strictly just a point to prove, like, hey, you can get knocked down. It was to teach me humility, Yeah,
that's tough, man.
So yeah, that sucked. But so again, what I'm shaping right here is the constant ups and downs of what I'm going through, right?
Sure.
Constant failure, evolution. And so I know a lot of people are going through the same thing. And so I go through AIT and having a decent time, and I'm also seeing some things in the military I don't like. There's some frustrations. And then I immediately deploy to Iraq in 2006. I go for 15 months away. First time really away from home, away from anybody that I knew. And I had a lot of time to think. So I go on that deployment. I'm an engineer, and I get really frustrated at my current situation again. I see mediocrity. I have some really good leaders that are over me, but I have some really bad ones. And I'm really frustrated that I can't do anything about it. Again, 15 months in Iraq, pretty stressful time in my life. And I have a lot of time to think. And what I come to the conclusion of is, I can't stand where I'm at in life again, but I want to make a difference. And a buddy of mine comes to me and he says, hey, have you heard of the Army's Green to Gold program? And the Army's Green to Gold program, it's a program that allows you to go back to college and switch from enlisted to officer.
Okay, yeah.
So he presents that. And I'm like fed up listening to everybody else at this point. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I want to do. And so I apply for this Green to Gold scholarship, and I don't think that I'm going to get approved at all because I don't have the confidence to think that I'm going to get in, or I don't even think that I'm intelligent enough to get in. That's that small town kid that we talked about at the beginning of this episode, is still inside of me. to much of my surprise, I finish out the deployment, I get back and I get approved. And talk about, I felt like I won the state championship at wrestling. You know what I mean? Like I was so happy, so happy.
Yeah. That's awesome,
So,
man.
yeah. So I get accepted to green to gold. I go to college, and initially I want to be an architect. And I'm like, that makes sense. It's logical. But I meet a guy that's been to the Ranger Regiment and has a background in special operations, and he starts opening those doors to me. He starts expanding my understanding of special operations. And, you know, I said, this is working. This idea of not listening to everybody else. I was like, I'm going to do what I want to do. So I decided to study kinesiology in school. I had a pre-physical therapy track. I decided to pursue the infantry, and my goal was to get into special operations. And that was very liberating. You know, that freedom of just, hey, I'm going to do what I want to do. What ends up happening is I excel at it. And I'm a strong leader. You know, I grew up with 3 brothers, so I led them in my youth. And then I'm in basic training. I led that whole platoon there. So I have all this leadership stacking up with me and trailing me throughout my life. And when I find the infantry, I'm a perfect fit. I decided to pursue it, and it's highly competitive. Only 10% of the officers in your year group get accepted into the infantry, and I qualified for that. And so again, the bar gets raised in my life.
Yeah.
And so I go through the next chapter is going into Ranger School. So I go through IBOLC, which is the Infantry Officer Basic Leader course. And that's where they teach you infantry tactics as an officer. So I go through that. And then the follow-on school is Ranger School. So Ranger School is a 62-day leadership school that teaches you survival, tactics, and leadership, and evaluates you on your potential. So it has a less than 30% graduation rate. Of that, most people recycle the phases throughout it several times. There's 3 phases. I go into that course, pretty nervous, but excited. And there's probably less than 10%, maybe 1% of the people that graduate Ranger School go through without interruption.
Okay, yeah.
And at this point, I'm every night, I'm obsessing about this path that I'm about to step into. I'm visualizing every single night. I'm writing my goals. I'm just completely obsessed about becoming a leader in special operations. And I want to earn myself as an infantryman and earn myself in combat as an infantryman, right? So I go through Ranger School and I pass first time, no issues.
Sweet.
And my mind is blown again. I'm like, holy shit, I can do more. So I go on to serve as a platoon leader at the 25th Infantry Division in Hawaii. And at this time, this is 2000, when did I get there? 2012, 2013. And so the war is kind of starting to die down, right? Remember I told you I wanted to go on and serve as an infantryman in combat. I wanted to prove myself as an infantryman in combat. So those ambitions were I'm slowly starting to get discouraged, because the war is getting to dying down.
Sorry, which war specifically is that?
Yeah, so we're starting to pull out of Iraq. We have a minimal presence in Afghanistan at this time.
Okay.
And it's starting to look less and less like I'll get to deploy. And okay, I'm never going to get to go earn myself and prove myself as an infantryman. But I ended up, having a great time there, leading a phenomenal platoon and turning that platoon into the best platoon in my company and in the battalion, which is a really high, it's one of the highlights of my, one of my achievements is the impact that I made while I was there, regardless. I go through that, and the next thing I do is I compete in the Army's Best Ranger competition, which is a 3-day physical event where you don't sleep, you just continue to move. And it's really intense. And at this point, I've never really ran more than 5 miles or 12. I did the 12-mile ruck march, but I never really ran consistently more than 5 miles at this point in time. But I get talked into it by this leader that had been to the 75th Ranger Regiment. He says, hey, Jeremiah, come on, try this thing. Let's just do the workout. So I go out and I actually place really well. And so that puts me into the competition bracket. And so the Army takes 52 teams to compete against each other for 3 days. And it's nonstop moving for 3 days. We put on 60 to 62 miles in the first 24 hours, most of it with a rucksack on, with 55, 65 pounds on my back. Yeah.
It's like three marathons.
Yeah. So, and in between events, we're shooting, we're doing medical training. We're doing obstacle courses,
Yeah.
so it's pretty intense. My buddy hits a wall, a physical wall, because it's a partnered event. And we're like 400 meters away from the finish line for finishing that gate. And after that day, after that event, they take the 52 teams, they cut them down to 25. Only 25 teams move on. We're in like 20th place in that single event, and we're sitting about 10th across the whole as a ranking for the whole thing. So we're coming in, and the 400 meter target is away. Like we just have the finish line, but he hits a wall, I hit a wall, and we get leapfrogged by some teams behind us, and we find ourselves in the 26th place and we get cut.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so pretty brutal. But again, so that was another thing that I had put myself into, relentlessly and unforgivingly, and I came up short. So I was pretty discouraged. It felt like failure again. But what I realized afterwards was, hey, man, you can do more. You can run more than 5 miles. Look what you just did. That leader that I told you about that put me into that competition, he had been to the 75th Ranger Regiment. Some of the guys that were training us had been to the 75th. And I started thinking, hey, maybe I can do this. So I applied, and I got selected to attend the assessment. And the assessment's like 30 days where they do psychological and physical testing. It's very intense, and very few people are selected.
What sort of testing do you go through? What's the psychological? Sorry, do you say physiological testing or do you say psychological?
Psychological, yeah.
Okay, so what does psychological testing consist of? What does that actually mean in practice?
Yeah, so I can't get into specifics, but I will say that they do some personality assessments, right? So that's one gate. They do some cognitive obstacle courses where they're going to test you physically and mentally at the same time and see how you handle pressure and stress and can make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to evaluate you in the tactical environment and in a classroom environment with stress, which is in the form of a board, right? So, an entourage of high-ranking officials just digging into you and asking you tactical questions and whatnot. So that's kind of the psychological testing. And you do meet with a psychologist who evaluates you and to make sure that they're putting a high performer in, not somebody that's a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So I go through that, and I do very well, and I get picked up. And again, it's if you think about the tier of this, at the base of it, at the base of the Army, if you think of it like a pyramid, there's 400,000 soldiers. And as you kind of build your way up into special operations, that gets narrower and more narrow. At this tier, there's very few infantry officers that make it to this level. So I end up getting assessed and selected, and I go on and I serve at the 75th Ranger Regiment. I serve as a platoon leader there for the entire time I'm there, which is unheard of. It's like, but most of the time you have to shuffle between staff positions, like doing computer work, and then leading soldiers or Rangers. I was fortunate enough to spend my entire time there as a platoon leader, and that was incredible. So all that time that I talked to you about before about wanting to earn myself in combat, I had still been obsessing about that every single night, visualizing it in extreme detail, like very, very specific, right? And so I go on, and it's like I'm starting to gravitate closer and closer to that dream. And I get to the 75th, and I spend my time there, and I deploy multiple times with them. And in one event, I relive the exact visualization, the imagery, the focus that I had, that I was rehearsing every single night. It manifests itself on a mission. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's just an overwhelming experience. I'm like, everything that and this is why I believe in the law of attraction and all this stuff. So not only have I been able to pass through all these gates, and I get to this really incredible point in my career, I feel like I'm developing a system to teach people how to do this.
Okay.
Visualization, goal setting, all these things. So I go on, I have that experience, and I get done. And just to put this into perspective, it was like winning the lottery, right? So out of 400,000 soldiers in the Army, I don't give exact numbers, but at this point in my career, there's between 20 and 30 individuals that have this job in the entire Army.
Nationally?
Yeah.
Okay.
So of those 20 to 30, not all of them are deploying, and not all of them are going on and fighting, because we're getting tasked out to do other things, advising missions and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's even more rare to go on and serve in combat. But I was lucky enough to serve in combat, to live out those dreams and ambitions that I had. And again, it was
So
a phenomenal experience.
where was it that you served in combat? Was that in Iraq?
So this is in Afghanistan. I can talk a little bit about it. Just not a lot. I can't tell you provinces and stuff like that. But I was in Afghanistan at this time. I was with the 75th Ranger Regiment. Yeah.
And what was that experience like? If there's stuff you can't share, then that's fine. I'm just curious as to what that experience was actually like.
I can talk very specific, just not like, dates and times and places.
Yeah, sure.
Man, it was revealing of war teaches you a lot of stuff. It teaches you who you are. And I think that the challenges that you face, whether in combat or leading up into combat, tell a lot about your personality. It was a phenomenal experience in that I got to live my dream, but it was also a great experience because I got to discover more of who I am.
Okay.
And I think that one of the biggest things that I took away from it was just this feeling of feeling protected. No matter what the situation was, I was able to think critically, think without issue, and lead, and not shut down like some guys can and will do.
Yeah. So what was the driver for you beyond, I guess, was it merely just wanting to prove yourself that made you want to, be really keen? You said it was a dream to go into combat, whereas of course, as I'm sure you must know, that's a nightmare for a lot of people. So what was it in you, I guess, that planted that seed? Like, this is what I really want to do. What made it a dream?
Yeah. So at first it was about just proving myself 100%. I wanted to earn myself as an infantryman, and I felt like that would validate me. The other part is I wanted to know how I would handle that type of situation, because as an infantryman, that's really what it comes down to. Can I conduct myself? Can I be a leader in a stressful situation? And so that was part of it, but at the early stages, it was more about proving myself. And I liked that I had evolved, right? We talked about my early childhood and how I had like no context of the world and what I was capable of, right? But as I start progressing, I'm like, oh man, I can do more. So that process is what really excited me.
Yeah.
And I said, let me see how high I can take this.
Were you fearful at any point?
Anxious, not fearful.
Okay.
Did you play sports at all in high school?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I primarily rugby, but I played everything. I played football, which you guys would call soccer. I played when I was in Saudi Arabia, I played baseball. I've done a lot of sports, not all of them like long term, but I've competed in swimming. I've done tennis, cricket, rowing, basketball, baseball. Like I've done a ton of sports, but rugby was my main one. That's the one that I carried all the way through to university.
Yeah, so it's similar in that you get anxious before a competition.
Okay.
Now when you're actually being shot at, I've been shot at pretty close.
I was going to say that's pretty different. I was going to say like comparing it to sport, I'm kind of like, a little bit of nerve. Same with a live performance, but when I go on stage or when I'm playing rugby, like, I'm not worried about bullets flying at me.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, there is that difference, but you got to think like you're preparing for this event your whole career. You're, at least if you're smart about it, you're preparing for it. Some people aren't. Some people go into that, get put into this situation. Early on in Iraq, I don't think guys were ready for it. And I think that's what messed a lot of people up. But when I was in Afghanistan, just to put it into context, like, I've been shot at probably 10 meters away by a machine gun, like in my face. This guy was in a bunker. It was a defining moment.
I'm just curious as to, what it's like. Because, when it comes to military stuff, it's always interesting because you've got the reality of it, and then you've got the depictions of it. So when most people think about like war or army or military or whatever, they think of like movies or books or even video games now. You've got obviously Call of Duty and all that kind of stuff. It's almost like a source of entertainment to people, right? People are on the outside looking at this thing as a source of entertainment. So I'm curious as to someone who's actually been there, real life in the situation, what that actually feels like. Because I think I'm a pretty brave guy. I'm not someone who generally deals with too much fear, but I'll keep it 100 and be like, at no point in my life did I ever consider like going into the military because I was like, nah, I don't want to be shot at. Like, screw that. Like, I was like, screw that. Like, so someone else can do that, but that's not me.
Getting shot at is not the fun part, and shooting back is the fun part.
Fair enough. Man.
I don't want to sit here and toot my own horn about this stuff. Like the guys that are the real heroes and the guys that do phenomenal, like these, you would be so impressed. It's like having an INSOF in special operations and even in conventional forces, man. The infantryman is something special. He has this desire to get the mission done, and to see like the guys that I was leading, it was like having an NFL team at your fingertips. All you have to do is just point and tell them what to go do, and they go and execute. That specific event that I was telling you about, where I was shot at, 10 meters away, one of my outstanding leaders, junior leaders, he ends up moving to the gunfire. He travels to it. I'm commanding and controlling, just behind this berm. The enemy's on the backside of this bunker, and me and him have a quick session where we're talking about how to take this thing out. And he grabs his fire team. I'm controlling the guys to my right. He goes to my left. He lays down suppressive fire, moves to the bunker while shooting with his fire team protecting him, lays down it's an explosive charge, blows it to create a breach inside of the bunker, withdraws. We reconsolidate, still firing, still shooting. He goes back to the bunker, same machine gun inside, shooting at us. He almost eats around in his face, probably. I saw the barrel stick out of the bunker and fire at him, and he drops another grenade inside of it, kills 2, wounds 2, inside of the bunker, and neutralizes the threat. And he did that without issue.
Here's a question. This might be this is real talk with Zuby, so I'm going to put out my real talk questions. At any point, do you ever? So what's the best way to put it? I guess in terms of like wars, especially when it comes to like Iraq and Afghanistan and these wars, which have been a little bit contentious, I guess, with people in terms of, like, should the US even have gone there or been there, where, you kind of have all these different viewpoints on it amongst the general population. And I'm wondering for the people in the military themselves, because obviously everybody needs to be on the same page, right? You've got a mission. This is the mission. You want to go out there and you want to execute it. But I guess for, if not yourself, maybe amongst other people, was there ever a point where you're kind of like questioning the bigger picture? Yeah. I don't know, like you're shooting, someone's shooting at you, you're shooting at somebody's shooting at you, but like you don't know who that person is. They don't know who you are. Like, it's just like, the mission sets you as our team versus your team, but it's like on a personal level or whatever, like there's no actual animosity or anything like that. You know what I mean? That's something I've always like mulled around in my head and just wondered how that kind of works on kind of like a human level,
Yeah. So questioning your purpose is something that everybody goes through, especially in the military, especially in a war that we've been fighting for, 18 years. You're going to question. And if you don't question it, you're a fool. It means you're just ignorant and you're just blind to everything. Yeah. But how you communicate it to yourself is what really matters, right? We've lost a lot of people overseas. I've lost some close friends recently. So yeah, that stuff stings, but I think it's important to remember why we're doing it. So I constantly keep that in the forefront of my mind. Now, when we're talking about this specific event, receiving contact and thinking about the other person and all that stuff goes out the window. You're not thinking about any of that. Yeah. I'm not thinking about this guy's family. I'm not thinking about any of that stuff. I'm just thinking about, this is my team, that's his team. Need to neutralize this. Yeah. And afterwards, I have no animosity towards anybody that is my enemy, right? I respect them. They have their own beliefs. I pity them. I pity some of the way of their, the way they live and stuff like that. But it's unfortunate is essentially the best way for me to describe it. So I don't see them and see the situation in that type of context. Yeah.
I think it must take a very specific type of personality to even do that. Do you think? Is there like I just think there are a lot of people who would not be able to do that for better or worse. You know what I mean? So I'm just wondering, how is that just like something in your personality and other people's personalities that allows that? And I don't even know what the question is here.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
I'm just kind of thinking out loud, you know?
you're asking, are some people bred and built for that type of
Yeah,
situation?
yeah, I guess so. I mean, going back to our initial conversation about, the bear hunting and stuff like that, like there's people who wouldn't even be able to hunt, right? So I think, you've got people who are just wired differently and built differently and raised differently. So,
Yeah.
some people couldn't pull a fish out the water.
Well, what's funny
So,
is when I was a kid, I actually didn't like killing the animals.
okay.
I had a hard time with it. I'm
Mm,
naturally, I can feel what other people and things are feeling stronger than a lot of other people. I'm very empathetic. That's probably where I get some of my strength as a leader, because
mm.
I'm concerned with the people under me, right?
Yeah,
But
sure.
if you had to tell me to go hunt a bear or hunt a person, I would choose the person every time.
Oh, wow. I was so ready for you to say the bear, and then I was like, oh, I was gonna.
Yeah, man. It's true though. It really is. Like, I guess for me, my own individual take on it is people always want the best outcome. The truth of the matter is that we fight. We've always fought. People die. And once you come to that realization that the world is not full of sunshine and rainbows, it becomes a lot easier to digest that information when it's put in front of you. And it just becomes a hard fact. And I have my own ways of coping with it. I think it's up to the individual to figure out how they're going to process taking another human's life. But there's also some value to it in that it reminds you how precious life is. After you take somebody's life, like I've seen guys, expire within, they're just, I've watched them expire, right? Their last breaths.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very powerful thing to feel in a positive and negative way.
How do you cope with it? Because obviously not everybody does. PTSD is a very, very real thing that affects a significant percentage of people who, do face war. So how do you personally deal and cope with it and remain, a very positive, uplifting, inspirational person at the same time?
It's like what I teach people in my coaching business. It's reframing, right? How you think is a matter of choice. So that's really what it comes down to. How do I want to think about this situation so that it serves me?
Mm.
The guys that have PTSD are generally, from what I've seen, guys that got put in a situation they didn't want to be in and exposed to a very traumatic experience, generally on the defense. You can imagine the scarcity and the fear that you would feel on the defense versus the offense, right?
Sure.
So it's a totally different situation here. Now, I've been on the other end where I've been in the defense a little bit. When I was in Iraq and I was enlisted, I didn't have a combat job, but I was moving all the time on roads that had IEDs on them. There's a constant threat. So I've been exposed to that aspect of things. And I would much rather be on the offense.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that's just interesting to me. Like it's a whole different world for me. Like I said, it's one of those things that I think everybody feels like they know some stuff about it because, like I said, everybody's seen movies, played games, watched TV shows or whatever. So it's like you feel like you kind of know what it's like, but I don't think there's certain things that I think you just have to experience or at least talk to somebody who's experienced it to really get a better picture.
I guess if I were to summarize it, my thoughts are life is fragile.
Mm-hmm.
Life is so, so fragile. And I think that is part of what drives me today to get exactly what I want out of life without any remorse, just to give it my all and teach other people how to do the same, because I've seen life go away, and everybody that's had friends or family members pass, like they have that same feeling. They know that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. No, it's important to sometimes have that reminder of, what, we're all going to die. Tomorrow's not promised. We can't control everything. It sounds a little bit morbid, but I think, yeah, there's a lot of positivity to be gained from that in terms of the way you live your life and the way you treat other people. I think if you kind of have this false idea, or you never think about the fact that, yeah, you are going to pass away at some point, then it's easy to just kind of sit around and not be productive and not go for your goals and treat people badly, hold grudges, all that kind of stuff. Cause you're not thinking, no, you know what, like next week, this could all end. So let me be a positive force and let me go for what I actually want to do.
Absolutely. We are, every day that we wake up, we are lucky. 150,000 people die a day. And the
Mm,
fact that every day could be your last, like people have to wake up to that. You know, I think about it every single day I get up. Thank God I'm awake.
mm,
Thank God I woke up today. And it creates a sense of urgency to get the things done that we want to do when you know that your time is running out.
mm.
Because
That's powerful.
you're gonna wake up one day. I call it the rocking chair test. You know, I look back on my life as I lived it and I wonder what decisions I wish I would have made along the way from the perspective of sitting on my rocking chair outside my dream home as if life was about to end, as if I was days away from my life's end.
Mm,
You know, hey, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and that's it, man. You know, how do I wish I would have lived life? And I ask myself that all the time. How do I wish I would have handled today? And that just puts you on a positive trajectory to get the most out of it and really figure out what you want, you know?
yeah, man. So coming a little bit more forward into the present then. So you've left the military now, is that correct?
Not necessarily. So I'm a former Ranger regiment officer, but I'm on active duty right now as a company commander in the conventional force.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I do now. I have like 130 soldiers underneath me.
Okay.
That's my 9 to 5, if you will. And then I
Okay, yeah.
also have this company, Concur Academy, which I started up.
Okay, so what's Concur Academy all about?
Yeah, constant improvement and growth
Mm,
is about helping people, giving them the tools that I've used to manifest my dreams and help them get to the next level. Because a lot of people don't have those. It's all the skills that I wish I had when I was younger, and I didn't. And I wanted to get better. And I wanted to be better and do something more.
gotcha. So when did you start it?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because I've been coaching people for a really long time, giving advice. You know, like I talked about with being an older brother and stuff like that. But I hired a business coach, you know, and really he's a phenomenal individual to help me out with evolving because I realized like I can't do this on my own. I tried for 4 years of a way to elevate myself financially and in the business and entrepreneur world. I tried trading stocks for 2 years straight. I had some ups and downs. And then I switched over. I did some online businesses, and those went through the ups and downs. And really what stuck was this business Conquer Academy. And what I had been neglecting was my skills as a leader and my experience evolving as a person.
Hmm.
So when I got back from my last deployment in November, actually, I set all the conditions to start Conquer Academy until I got back. I wrote an ebook called The Whole Man Project while I was in Afghanistan, which if any, actually for any of your listeners to give back to this community, if anybody wants to DM me on Instagram, I'll send them a free copy of it. And it's my story plus all the tools to help you elevate yourself to the next level. It's called The Whole Man Project. The Army's currently reviewing it. So I pulled it off of Amazon,
Okay.
and it was getting circulated with like Jocko Willink and David Goggins. Like I
All
sold
right.
like 200 copies in like 3 days or something like that. It was crazy, and I gotta make sure the Army approves me to do this. So I paused it,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and now it's going through the Army chain. So right now is a hot time to come and get my book if anybody wants it, and it'll help you guys out. I spent the whole deployment writing that book and working with my business coach, getting clear on some things in life. And then I got back and I launched the company, and it immediately took off.
So how did you go about launching it and getting people on board?
So the first thing I did, I stepped into Instagram, right, as the first thing. I
Hmm.
started sharing my skills, my performance tips, my goal setting tips, my motivation, all that stuff. I just started sharing the information. I said, you know what, I'm just going to give this stuff away for free. And I will continue to do that. And I started there to help people and create an audience. And I've been in and off Instagram for a couple of years doing some different various things, but this is really the first time I've been on Instagram very focused.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing. Is I put it up on Conquer Academy. I just announced it. I said I welcomed people that wanted to get this training, and I received a ton, and like I said, it keeps getting better and better. So
That's awesome, man. And is there like a specific demographic or a type of person that you're wanting to work with? Is it mainly guys, or is it women as well? Young people, older people? Is there like a target audience for it?
So I've worked with a pretty broad audience right now, males and females. Guys are in the corporate world, guys are in government organizations. I helped one guy get into an FBI selection. He went on to do that. I helped a female fitness professional elevate her business by removing her limiting beliefs and increase her income. I'm training a Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter. It goes on and on. So really my focus is athletes, leaders, and achievers.
Okay.
So these are high performers that have I don't want to say high performers. They're people that are looking for the next level is the bottom line.
Yeah. So, people who are already self-driven and performing at a pretty high level and trying to go above and beyond that.
Or if they're stuck and so a lot of the guys that I'll train, I have this one guy, he makes over 6 figures. He was a fighter. He got very comfortable in the corporate world through his individual skills. And now he's realizing that he got complacent. He started a family. He's very comfortable, and he's like, dude, my life sucks. He's like, he loves his family and stuff, but he realized that like he stopped evolving, and it's driving him crazy. So me and him, I'm working with him, and we're evolving him to the next circle so he can make more money, have a better impact with his family, get more out of life, get in better shape. And what's cool about it is through helping him, his wife's coming along as well. You know, it's carrying over to her through my coaching with him.
That's awesome, man. I think we'll definitely get you back on the podcast in the future. Let people know where they can find you online.
Yeah, absolutely. So Instagram is the number one place. I'm at Jeramiah Solven. So it's all one word, JERAMIAH. And then my last name is Solven, SOLVEN. And I engage with every single person that DMs me and drops comments in my page. And I actually am offering 5 free breakthrough coaching sessions for anybody that's interested. The link is in my bio. So if this interests them, if they want help evolving as a person, that's the best place to go when you set it up.
Awesome, man. And before we go, if you can give one tip or piece of advice that people can take with them, if there's one thing you'd like to just say to whoever's listening that they can take away and keep in mind or act on, what would that be?
So I had a pretty phenomenal leader give me some advice one time that put me on a whole new trajectory. And if you're considering getting help, whether it's coaching or whether it's, somebody, a personal trainer, it doesn't matter what it is, or you're about to step into something new and you're trying to figure out if you should do it. One piece of advice is go.
That sounds good, man. Awesome, Jeremiah. So good to have you on the podcast, bro. Keep on inspiring, keep being awesome, and we'll definitely talk again in the future.
Thanks again for having me. I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Nice one, man. Take care.
I am the man, sick with the slang, sick and I'm destined for fame.